Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, hope you've all been doing well. In this video, I wanted to talk about Nvidia's RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti graphics cards. Thought I'd give you guys my opinion on them now that reviews are out with benchmarks, and also since they've hit store shelves. I wanted to wait until all of that was done before making a conclusive video like this, even though the writing was on the wall. There are a ton of reviews out there right now, so if you haven't already done so, check them out from your favorite tech press outlet. Now, if you have seen more than one review, you'll notice that they all pretty much tell the same story. The RTX 2080 performs quite identically to the 1080 Ti, and the 2080 Ti offered a 20 to 30% improvement on average depending on which game you were looking at and at what resolution was tested. Now, even before the benchmarks came out, ever since Nvidia's unveiling of the 20 series at Gamescom 2018, people were skeptical and disappointed with how Nvidia handled the launch. Rightfully so. Something about the whole launch appeared to be very fishy because they never showed any traditional performance benchmarks or talked about improvement in rasterization. Their entire conference revolved around RTX and ray tracing. Jensen Huang tried really hard to make it seem like PC gamers really needed this new technology in their lives, which is more of a false selling point, which I'll get to later. There was more uproar once prices had been unveiled because they were significantly higher than their previous generation cards, and that was just MSRP, taking into account current market prices, AIB cards, and Founders Edition cards, and in some cases, you're looking at a $100 to $200 premium. It absolutely does not make any sense as to why anyone would choose to buy a 2080 over the 1080 Ti when they perform the same. Currently on Newegg, you can find the GTX 1080 Ti for $650. Looking at the RTX 2080s, and they're going for around $800 to $850. That's a $100 to $200 increase over the 1080 Ti for the same level of performance. This is seriously disappointing to see because if you compare this generation of cards to previous releases and look at the comparisons that were made between those flagship cards, at least there were improvements to be seen there. The 980 was a decent amount faster than the 780 Ti. It wasn't anything dramatic, but according to Tech PowerUp, the difference on average was about 7%. Then, if we compare the Pascal GTX 1080 to the Maxwell GTX 980 Ti, and the leap here was larger, because the 1080 was a whopping 25 to 30% faster at around the same price. That's obviously not the case with Turing, and I remember the real value card of the Pascal launch was the GTX 1070. It offered performance that was comparable to the 980 Ti at the $400 price point, and people just lost their minds over that one. Before Turing and the 20 series were even released, I remember people were hoping that the trend would continue, and that the 2070 would offer 1080 Ti-like performance at the $400 to $450 price point. Obviously, this time around, that's not happening here, and you can only imagine the look on those people's faces. With this generation, 1080 Ti performance will actually cost you more. Let's move on to the 2080 Ti. With this card, a case can be made because it does bring an improvement over the previous flagship card, and from all the benchmarks I've seen, it's the card that will deliver you 60 plus FPS at 4K without any sort of compromises in the graphics menu. Now, although that's being used as a selling point, you're going to have to hand over an insane amount of cash in order to achieve that performance. The difference between the 1080 Ti and 980 Ti was 35 to 45%, depending on the resolution, and it wasn't that much more expensive than the 980 Ti when looking at MSRP and how much partner cards sold for during the respective times. Where I live, the RTX 2080 Ti will cost double the price of a 1080 Ti. If it costs double, am I wrong in expecting double the performance? In the real world, that's obviously not going to happen, so I wouldn't say that at least expecting 40 to 50% increase over the previous flagship is unreasonable. Going back to what I said earlier about the 2080 Ti delivering a no compromise experience at 4K, sure, I get that. There's a market for that situation, and if you have the cash, then all the more power to you. However, the 1080 Ti with a mixture of high to very high or ultra settings can deliver that level of performance as well. Keep in mind, to keep things simple and consistent, a lot of these reviewers just choose the highest preset and then conduct their benchmarks. In the real world, that's not how things usually work. A lot of people will take the time to go in the graphics menu and play around with the settings so they can achieve the performance they want, including myself. I don't even play at 4K and I still do that, and that's because I'm targeting 144Hz at 1440p. If I was able to max out every single setting in a lot of these new AAA titles, I most likely wouldn't be able to meet my performance target. When playing at 4K with high to very high settings versus maxed out, there's usually not a drastic difference in terms of visual quality, but you do end up suffering a large performance deficit. So you have to ask yourself, is it better to make some tweaks in the graphics menu and pay $650 to enjoy 4K? Or would you rather pay double the price, if not higher, just so you can say, I've got all my sliders turned up? That question only you can answer. So with all that said, these price hikes, in my opinion, are not really justifiable, because the performance gap between the new generation and old generation is so small. Don't get me wrong, the performance itself isn't bad in any way. However, the point of bringing in a new generation is so that consumers can attain old flagship performance at lower prices, while the new high-end GPUs set a new bar for the best performance. With Turing, Nvidia achieved half of this objective, but went backwards with the other half. With the 20 series, it's like Nvidia has shifted the naming scheme up. The 2080 should have been the 2070 at $459, and the 2080 Ti should have been the 2080 for $699, if they were to follow the trend of older generations, with the 2080 Ti being the new Titan at $1,000. If Nvidia had done this, then I think people wouldn't have been so mad. But they didn't, and this is why it's frustrating, because you're paying more for less. And I'm afraid that with each generation, with the absent competition, this is going to get worse. But what about ray tracing, the thing that Nvidia was raving about during their entire presentation? Well, unfortunately, it's not even ready yet. Even though reviews and benchmarks are out, there's not a single game out right now which supports it. Therefore, we can't even see how performance will be like with these new GPUs under ray tracing scenarios. How much of a performance deficit do you have to endure in order to utilize this new hybrid rendering technology? Sure, there are a couple of synthetic benchmarks and demos out right now, but those don't really reflect real-world scenarios. Thus, in the end, you're going to be buying these GPUs on the promise that you'll get to eventually utilize ray tracing, just not for a while. If you look at the games list, there really aren't that many titles coming out that will support ray tracing and DLSS. Not to mention, developers will have to implement this on a game-by-game basis. It's not something that will start working with every application through Nvidia's driver. That really doesn't seem like a compelling offer in any way, especially when you have to consider paying $850 to even $1,200 in some cases. So while the Turing architecture looks like a good leap with this new tech, I don't believe we're going to be seeing PC gamers take advantage of ray tracing during its time. Not when it costs so much and with only a handful of games potentially coming out. I think ray tracing is fantastic, but until it becomes more widespread in the industry and we have cards that are more affordable and capable, it just doesn't make sense to hop on board. These are just my thoughts on these new 20 series graphics cards that I just wanted to relay to you guys. In the end, what you choose to do with your own money is your business. I hope you guys found this video to be informative and enjoyable. Leave your thoughts down below, and if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.